So I'm bored and I'm like, you know what? I've been on this spirituality thing. Why don't we like start spicing it up a bit? So I'm gonna tell y'all about when I was a witch in Salem, Massachusetts. So I think this is kind of interesting. And I've got kind of an interesting take. And yes, I've come back to Christianity and rededicated my life. But like, I'm not concerned about anything I did while I was claiming to be a witch. Like, my conscience feels clear on that, you know? And here's why. Well, I'm not totally clear. I did do some things wrong. I'll only tell y'all what I did wrong and what I don't really actually think matters all that much. So I grew up Presbyterian, and that meant that everything that was supposed to happen was gonna happen because it was God's will, right? I didn't actually really believe in free will growing up. I would actually say I believe something kind of similar to simulation theory, which is interesting. But you know, pointing to the book of Romans and saying like God has his book of chosen people, and that like he was in charge and he foreknew you, so he predestined you, and blah blah blah. I guess I shouldn't say blah 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 about the Bible, but you understand the concept. Anyway, so witchcraft, right? I don't actually feel that guilty about it. Most of it, I'd say like 99% of it, I'm like, that's probably actually not that big of a deal. Because what I would do is anytime I would do something, I'd be like, I'm calling upon my angels, the spirits of my ancestors, and any gods that love me. And then I'd like light a candle and make a wish. Sometimes I would burn a leaf or a piece of paper. But you know, I'm kind of like thinking, like I devoted my life to Christ when I was really young. And since I had done that, I don't think you can lose your salvation. And the whole time I was doing witchcraft, I was like, any gods that love me, this is my wish. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's kind of, I don't know, it just seems so silly now, you know, because it's just like, I think that whatever is meant to happen is going to happen anyway. You know, I think all that witchcraft was ever doing for me was that I was putting more emotional weight into things turning out one way or another. But, you know, the whole time I was like believing in like predestination. So it's like, I didn't even believe I was doing anything except putting more energy into things, you know? And like, even like things that could be considered like love spells, or like me lighting a candle and being like, God, if you want me to end up with this person, here is a candle. If you want me to end up with them. So it's like, the whole thing is it was never gonna affect anybody that I wasn't already destined to have some tie with, you know? So it's like, I don't really feel like, I guess really the only really bad thing is just putting more emotional weight into certain outcomes. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just approach spirituality so differently than most people. Another thing is that like sold me on to Christianity was the idea that the idea of infinite universes, right? If there are infinite universes, then doesn't it mean that believing in heaven and believing in Christ means that there's going to be a higher probability that that will actually happen? Like, this is what people, I feel like, don't understand about like manifestation or whatever, right? It's like, you just kind of be like, yeah, it's probably gonna happen. And then most of the time it does. It's how my life has been kind of strange, you know? It's because I've been like, that would be interesting. And then I'm like, I want that to happen. And then it just kind of does. So yeah. Oh, I guess I could tell you guys about the experience I had that made me turn back into Christianity. I just don't want anybody to take it the wrong way. That's why I haven't said anything about it. But okay, I believe in predestination, and I believe I wouldn't have been in this situation if God had not predestined me to be there because of events that would later on transpire, if that makes sense. So my thinking is God knew I would be there praying a specific prayer, and then the event happened. I don't believe my prayer caused the event to happen. I'm going to like foreshadow this by that, right? But I was on a vacation, and we were hanging out in the hotel room. And while we were hanging out in the hotel room, we're watching TV. And that was the same time when there was an assassination attempt on the current person at the White House. And I was scared, not because I was like supporting anyone politically, but because I felt like it was a bad sign for the state of the nation for a candidate to be attacked. That's why I was scared. And so I went into a room. I went to the bathroom in the hotel room, and I prayed. And I was like scared, and I was like, God, if you really are real, show me a sign, right? And so nothing really happened, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'll just go about my way and not think that deeply about it. And then a little bit later, a couple months later, I started sobbing my eyes out because the same place that I prayed that prayer in ended up underwater because it was in Asheville, North Carolina. That same place I prayed ended up underwater, and I survived the flood. And so that's really what my turning point back into Christianity was, because I was just like, that felt like such a sign, you know, and I was so hurt and moved to see like everything that had happened there, because it was like I was just in Asheville, you know, and it was like I have such distinct memories of being there and then seeing everything that happened, and it was just so heartbreaking. So that was really my turning point back into Christianity. So yeah, I definitely think though, since coming back into Christianity, that I've been shown that the methods I was using to try to like get what I want in life, they weren't even working anyway. First of all, they weren't even working. So I was like, God's question mark. And obviously, I think there's only one God. And I think that was another part of the reason that things in my life that really belonged to me did not end up in my life, because I was doing it the wrong way. And I feel like, sometimes I feel like God's like, you're gonna have what you were supposed to have, but you're only gonna do it through me, you know? And I actually feel more comforted in that, because it feels like things are gonna work out. You know, I believe things are gonna work out in a positive way. So yeah, that's my testimony. Sorry, I'm not like putting in all the emotion I really feel into how I'm speaking right now. I just wanted to talk and not get super emotional. So it's called compartmentalizing. Oh my gosh. I need to, sometimes I'm just like, why do I even, you know what? I think it was God's will for me to just blabber. I think everything's God's will. That's why people are like, oh, are you not afraid of blah, 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 blah. It's probably just God's will. I don't know. Have you ever hear the saying that the difference between a Baptist and a Presbyterian, like child specifically, is that a Baptist child will pray and pray and pray for a new bike, and a Presbyterian child will just steal the bike and pray for forgiveness? That's not me. I just thought it was funny. I shouldn't have said that. It was God's will for me to say that, so whatever. It was a joke. I need to shut up. I'm really smart, actually. I'm so tired. I've been kept up. My energy has just felt absolutely off. I do think I'm very sensitive to energy. I've been able to pick up on things happening before they happen, and I tell people, and they don't believe me, and then it comes into fruition, and they're like, oh, we should have believed you the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was saying, man. Whatever. I've just gotten to the point I don't even care. I'm just like, it's God's will whether or not you believe me, so whatever. Yeah, I think that was the biggest mistake, though, that I ever did with witchcraft, is putting too much energy into outcomes. Yeah. Like, I think the best possible outcome is going to happen. And if you believe that, law of probability says more likely to happen. So that's kind of what I'm rolling with, you know. Anyway, so I'm in Texas. Strange how that works. One other thing I guess I could talk about while I'm blabbering is that I think I think a mistake that I've made in my life is, I don't know if I'm going to explain this very well. I think a big mistake I've made in my life is thinking that fictional situations and characters hold no significance in the real world. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that because I think that when you watch or create something or read something, that there's going to be a part of your subconscious that projects itself onto characters. And so when you read like abusive situations of characters, then you're also somewhat abusing yourself. I believe that the things you create actually matter, when I didn't actually think they did all the time. And that's something I feel really bad about, and I feel guilty about some of the content I've consumed in my life. Fictional or not, it's not always the best, and I wish I would have focused on more positive things. So my takeaway today is just to focus on more positive things, I guess. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble. I don't really talk to people much anymore, so I appreciate people watching my videos. Okay, bye. Love you.